everybody, it's A Dog's Life with Angela Ardolino, and today I'm joined with another fantastic holistic vet, Dr. Erika Halle. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you doing?
Very good. I loved
Good.
reading your bio because you said something in your bio that would make me think that this is what most vets would think when they entered vet school, because the majority of vets are getting into being a vet because they love animals and they want to help them. And you mentioned in your bio on your website that I think it was your first year and you were like, whoa, wait a minute,
Yes.
maybe this isn't what I want to do. This doesn't seem like it's up my alley at all. And then you got lucky and you met somebody who showed you something else. I want you to tell that story because I hear it all the time. But before I started interviewing vets or talking to vets, I'd never heard this before. So I think it's really important for most of our listeners are pet parents. We do have a lot of vets. I'm sure I have a lot of people who are younger people who are interested in being a vet. But tell that story and how you ended up becoming a holistic vet instead of a conventional vet.
Absolutely. I really love telling this story, actually. I tell people a lot that I am the vet who almost wasn't. I went to technician school for my undergraduate degree, for my pre-vet. So I'd already learned a lot of, basic anatomy and physiology and things like that, which is what the first year of vet school is.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of time where I was just kind of sitting in class and pondering my future with a fair amount of drama, I might add. So I'm sitting here in school. It's about halfway through the first year, and I just reached this point where I'm like, wow, this is really boring. I've done all of this before so far, and what am I going through this for? What's the end goal? And I thought back to all the experiences I'd had in clinics, and I thought, oh, the end goal is I'm going to be vaccinating all my healthy patients and giving antibiotics or steroids or prescription diets, which I don't mention on my bio on the page, to all my unhealthy patients. And that sounds even more boring than what I'm doing right now. And I certainly do not think I can do that for the rest of my life. So I had a few months, actually, I think, where I was really pondering quitting and thinking about all the time and money I'd invested so far and the motivations I'd had for even getting into vet school in the first place. And fortunately, I had a colleague who was really into agility and canine sports medicine. And she was going to do the path of taking acupuncture training, chiropractic training, so that she could do sports medicine for dogs, which was like a totally new thing. I hadn't even ever considered that, and that isn't what I wanted to do. But she reintroduced me to alternative medicine and complementary medicine. And because of that, I realized that, okay, if I can just suffer through another 3.5 years of vet school, I can get these other trainings, and then I can actually be a healer. I can actually do things that support health in my well patients and that help bring the system back into balance in my ill patients. And when I really started looking into Chinese medicine in particular, I saw how this was a very complex, essentially the art of medicine kind of a system where there is no one right answer. People always want to ask me, what do I do for allergies or whatever? And my favorite answer is the answer I was taught by my Chinese medicine teacher, which is, it depends. There are always a bunch of factors, both individual to the patients, to the family, the history, all of that. And that really changes what the answer is in a lot of cases. So that kind of individuality, flexibility, and variation is what makes me love this and what makes it so I don't get bored of it. And I know that I'm actually helping my patients. I'm not just suppressing symptoms like we do with steroids in particular. We're actually fixing the imbalance so that they can feel better.
Oh, that was so beautifully said. And I mean, we didn't even think about this, but it is so true. Every time we go to a doctor, or our vet, our conventional doctor or vet, we aren't told okay, I don't know, high blood pressure, maybe they can say diet and things like that, but they don't necessarily do anything but hand us a prescription drug.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually how I discovered cannabis medicine. And I'm sure my listeners are probably always wondering why I'm bringing on these holistic vets that do Chinese medicine. Well, as I said before, Chinese medicine is when cannabis was first used and discovered and was removed. And now we're trying to get it. I'm trying to get it back in because it is just like all of these other wonderful herbs and plants, does amazing things, and it heals without causing damage. And
Mm-hmm.
you can imagine how many times I'm asked, well, how much do I give for this? Or
Right.
my dog is, and I constantly saying it depends on every single animal. We just actually found a most beautiful line that we've written out and we've adopted, that it's like, it depends on every single dog's age, breed, endocannabinoid deficiency, diet. So we love this because Chinese medicine is always saying that. I can't just tell you to take one dropper and it's going to get rid of your
Mm-hmm.
allergies or whatever it is, because everybody is so different. What I love is that you also incorporate food therapy, and you incorporate, is it Chinese food therapy? Did I read that
Yes.
right? What is that? Like, I know about the heating and the cooling proteins and vegetables. Is that kind of what the idea is?
Basically, yeah. So because I'm an integrative practitioner, I take some Western nutritional understanding into the picture as well. But I'm actually not a huge fan of reductionist Western nutrition, as I call it, where we're mostly focused on the numbers and getting the numbers right, because that, is sometimes not even accurate anymore anyway, based on what our food and food supply is doing at the moment. But basically, Chinese food medicine is using food the same way we use Chinese herbs. So when we're diagnosing someone to decide on an herbal prescription, we're looking at their condition. Is it hot or cold? Is there stagnation? Is there deficiency? What kind of deficiency? And once we have the diagnosis, say I have someone who's got toxic heat with an underlying blood deficiency, then I'm going to look at the foods energetically. And we're going to choose cooling foods to get rid of that symptom of heat, which can be things like inflamed skin is probably one of the most common toxic heat symptoms that I see.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a joint problem or any other inflammatory problem. And then we also want to pick foods that are going to tonify the blood deficiency. And if they do both at the same time, that's great. But otherwise, that's why we have recipes, so we can put several foods together and address the whole problem with the food. I usually, depending on the patients and their sensitivities, I usually also do herbs. But I've found that if I can get people to do the food and the herbs together, we get much faster, much better results. And a big part of this, part of it is the ingredients all have their own inherent energies, but the other part is that how you prepare those ingredients really can change the energy. So, if we're looking at, say, beef and sweet potatoes, just to keep it really simple, a beef and sweet potato diet that is a home cooked diet is going to be very different than a limited ingredient beef and sweet potato kibble. Even though
Yeah.
in theory the beef and the sweet potato are the same, the processing is so different that even if you're getting the highest quality, best company that is sourcing good meat and all of that, the processing to make it a kibble really changes the energy. It makes it very hot and dry. Even if the ingredients you were picking were cooling ingredients, now they're warmer than they otherwise would have been. So that's a big part of it, really, is at the simplest level, getting people away from processed food as much as possible, but then also trying to be selective with our ingredients so that they fit the diagnosis to try and bring the system back to balance.
I think that's one of the reasons I'm so attracted to Chinese medicine. Well, because, Chinese medicine is the ones that used cannabis medicine first, but the concept of using whole plants and whole foods to heal
Mm-hmm.
is right up my alley. So,
Yes.
we have all of these other wonderful herbs, and cannabis just happens to be another one of those amazing herbs. And just like how we process our product, or Answers, for instance, pet food, who Billy, I'm good friends with Billy, the nutrition science director there. Everything that we do when manufacturing our products is with the least processing. even
Mm-hmm.
the way we move it, even the way it's
Mm-hmm.
stored, even on his end, well, on my end too, how the plants are treated, how the
Yes, so
animals are
important.
treated. All of it is so important. And, you know, I know sometimes we may sound hokey because we're talking about energies, but it really is, you know, it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference if something is cooked at really high heat and then added in
Mm-hmm.
preservatives to keep it a certain way and then sits on a shelf, or sits in a hot truck and then sits on a shelf. So all of these things to me go hand in hand. It's all about whole, fresh plant food medicine. And I love that. I didn't think I knew what it was called, but now I do, and it makes sense. And I love how many people are starting to understand that, whether they're getting that
Mm-hmm.
way with their own health, starting with their own health, or they're starting through their pet and then, oh, wait, if they're going to eat better,
Right.
I'm going to eat better. I love the whole
Yes.
concept of us all eating the same. You know, I know there's
Mm-hmm.
some things that we can't do, but getting rid of that whole concept is that it is so complicated to feed our pets. Well, we have to feed our
Yeah.
families. They're just another part of our family. And I think that was basically done with marketing and advertising from these big food companies, making us think it was difficult. And if you want to take care of it and you're going to take care of them and get everything they need, pour this kibble in a bowl. And we have found that that is not the case at all. I know that leaky gut is something that is kind of your specialty and something that you would like to talk about. I know people get so confused about it. I think that the most confusing thing about it is the fact that it's something that we can cause when we're trying to help.
Mm-hmm.
Giving too many probiotics or prebiotics or digestive enzymes, and that we ourselves, when we're trying to help the microbiome, we're actually messing it up. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about, explain what leaky gut is, and kind of how I would think that a lot of dogs are suffering from it and we don't even know it. What the heck is leaky gut?
So leaky gut is one of these medical things that's a little bit hard to pin down because it's really more of a syndrome than a disease, which is kind of a strange distinction. But essentially with a syndrome, we don't always know necessarily what is causing it, and or it can be caused by dozens of different things, which with leaky gut, that is the case. We don't always know in an individual case, and it can be caused by all manner of things, really anything that causes inflammation in the gut, even if that inflammation started somewhere else in the body and wasn't primarily gut related in the beginning. Um, so the name leaky gut is really just describing what it is that happens. In our guts, we have these endothelial cells, the cells that line the gut. And there are supposed to be very tight seals in between each one of these cells so that the only things that can cross from the gut, which is technically outside of the body, into the bloodstream, into what is the inside of the body, are things that have been processed to small enough pieces that they're okay to go, like amino acids rather than proteins, lipids rather than full fats, simple carbohydrates, glucose rather than complex carbohydrates. So what happens with leaky gut is that these junctions, they break down. They're called tight junctions because they're supposed to be tight enough that nothing can cross them. In leaky gut, they get kind of swollen, they start to break down a little bit, and now we have these gaps basically between the cells. And now large molecules that are not supposed to come into our bodies can. So when you have leaky gut, it kind of doesn't matter what you eat. Whether you're allergic to it or not, you're almost 100% going to end up sensitive to it because say you're eating kangaroo, something that is a novel protein, it's very unlikely you have an allergy to it. But when you eat it, now big pieces of kangaroo protein are going across your gut instead of just little amino acids. So now when they come across, your body starts recognizing them as not self. This is a kangaroo protein, not a dog protein. And then you start having an inflammatory reaction to, in this case, the kangaroo. When really, if we fix the gut, the kangaroo itself is not the problem. The problem is that the gut is not functioning properly. And so this is a challenge because obviously we have to feed these pets while we're trying to treat the leaky gut. And the key to treating the leaky gut is getting the inflammation reduced so that the swelling will go down and these junctions can be tight again. So it can be quite complex. And again, how we treat it always depends on the patient and what exactly is going on with them. But my favorite kind of instant help sort of method is actually to use bone broth collagen. And I haven't done much experimenting myself with hydrolyzed collagen, the powdered stuff you can buy in the health food store.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that would work because it's been broken down. And what we're looking for with the bone broth are these big pieces of collagen that come in and act essentially like a bandage, and they cover up these holes so that they prevent anything from getting through. And that way we can still feed them, they can still eat, but we get fewer of those proteins, or ideally none of them, across the barrier while we're working on generally getting the system to calm down, to not have as much dampness. And Chinese medicine is usually a big part of this. Mm-hmm. So that those tight junctions will heal, and then we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Do you find that it's good to give the dog's gut a break and do, whether it's a fast or a bone broth fast? Is that good for them, especially if you have a dog and how do you know that they're having leaky gut? Because they're having some sort of inflammation. Do they have diarrhea? Do they throw up? Mm-hmm. Like what happens? I know I do know what happens, but I'd love for you to explain, is it something that's ongoing and nothing works? How do you know that your dog
is usually the case? You have some kind of symptoms that appear to be food allergies, whether that's a digestive symptom like vomiting and diarrhea, or in a lot of cases, their digestion is working okay, but we just see this massive inflammation everywhere. Their skin is inflamed. I had a very wise teacher once who said, the way you look on the outside is how you look on the inside, meaning that the quality of your skin reflects the quality of your guts. So if your skin is very inflamed, then it's very likely your guts are too. And now, based on what we know about that, it's very likely you have leaky guts. In fact, I would say that skin symptoms are the number one symptom I see with leaky gut in dogs anyway.
And it's probably what people are complaining about or trying to
yes
all the time. So I totally get that and see it all the time also. And it's one of the most complicated things because even when I switched my dogs to a raw or fresh diet, I still was giving them the probiotics and prebiotics and all of these other things when I really didn't need it anymore because I was giving it to them they were getting it naturally in their food, herbs or plants that I was giving them. So I actually was contributing to give them too much. I know that I've heard this. How is giving your dog too many probiotics contribute to a leaky gut?
Well, part of the challenge with leaky gut is because these larger things can cross the gut, it's not just the macro molecules that we're eating, proteins, carbohydrates, fats. It's anything that's in the gut, and that includes the biome. The normal gut flora can cross and get into the bloodstream. And then, of course, if you are adding more probiotics, if they're good quality, viable probiotics, they'll end up working against you because, again, they also will cross into the bloodstream. And, good bacteria or not, they're supposed to be in the gut, not in the bloodstream. Once they're in the bloodstream, that's a problem. And then it's a problem that your liver has to work on. And there's just more inflammation that's created by that. And an excess work created for a system that is already overburdened.
And so if someone is suffering, they're pretty sure that they have a leaky gut. It's not necessarily that go and switch the diet, is we have to repair the leak. So adding a bone broth, is there a certain kind of bone broth that you like over another one? Are there other plants? Are there other herbs? How do they know? Like, how do they get the diagnosis of leaky gut? Because I know for sure that most people who will be like, oh yeah, I think that's what my dog has, and then goes to their conventional vet, they're going to go, what?
Right. Yes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Take this, what's the one, the Metro one.
Oh
God.
yeah, metronidazole. Here you
Oh my
go.
God. I
Perfect.
don't even want to bother memorizing its name because it
Yes.
bothers me so much how it just completely destroys their microbiome and they go backwards.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Absolutely.
constantly saying, don't run and give your dog something when it's got a bout of diarrhea that is going to make things even worse. We want to try to get their
Mm-hmm.
body back into homeostasis where they can fix themselves if they can. So how do they know? Like if we're suspecting right now that someone has leaky gut, what do you do? What should they do first?
It's pretty tricky because we don't, again, it's not a disease, it's a syndrome, so we don't have a
Right.
test for it, which, if you don't have a test for it, then it's really hard sometimes to convince conventional doctors that the thing even exists. And even once you can do that, they don't have a pill that they can give you to solve it, so they don't want to think about it, is what mostly happens there. Um, it is really because the things we do to treat leaky gut are all health supportive regardless of who you are and what it is that's going on with you. It's really never wrong to just do a little experiment and see if doing a leaky gut kind of a therapy helps. And like I said, my favorite is bone broth. And I work a lot with cats, so I'm really cautious about recommending fasts, but a bone broth fast or something like that can be very, very helpful. And it does that. I don't have a super preference as far as one kind versus another. I do like it to be organic because we are talking about the bones, which have been with the animals their whole lives, and things can get stored there if they've been exposed particularly to heavy metals. So organic is great, and then it needs to really be bone broth, not just broth. It has to be that kind of gelatinous, collagen-rich broth.
And this is something you can easily make at home also.
Absolutely, yes. You can certainly buy it. I have lots of clients that don't want to make it, and then I recommend that they go check out Answers. Usually, Answers now has a turkey and a fish bone broth, so those are really great options with two different proteins. If you know you have an allergy, you maybe can find one of the two that will work.
Mhm.
But if you need to do something more exotic, like emu or kangaroo or whatever, if you can source the bones, you can make the bone broth. It just
Right.
takes the bones and a little bit of apple cider vinegar and some time with heat. You can make it fancier than that, but that's really the basics that are needed to make a good bone broth.
Ooh,
So
I
it's
love the
pretty easy.
incorporating the apple cider vinegar.
Yes, that's actually really key to get the minerals and the collagen out of the bones. If you don't use the apple cider vinegar, your chances of getting a good gelatinous bone broth are pretty slim. I think it can still be done if you get the right kind of bones, enough
Mhm.
joints and connective tissue, but it's much more challenging. But just a splash of apple cider vinegar, and that makes it much more likely to be successful.
Awesome. And how long should they give it to them? I mean, I always tell everybody that my bone broth and my goat's milk or my cow kefir are like my dog's desserts at night, like bedtime snacks,
Mm-hmm.
before they go to bed. And they love it. And it's really funny because at first when you give them a liquid, they're like, what am I supposed to do? And usually they'll try it and then they can't stop because it's so yummy. Is that do they incorporate it in their food or do you give it to them separately?
Yeah, so when we're using it for leaky gut, there's lots of things we can use bone broth for, but specifically for leaky gut, we do need to give it apart from food. And so what I recommend when we're treating someone who we really strongly suspect has leaky gut is that we do a certain amount of bone broth. For a 50-pound dog, I usually recommend like a quarter to a half a cup and 30 minutes at least before food, because we want it to get through the stomach into the intestines and band-aiding up all of those holes basically before we put the food in the system.
I love that concept. So that it just kind of lubes up everything so that nothing goes
Yes.
through. I love that. That is a great way of using it. And I'm talking to Dr. Erika Halle. Halle, did I say it right?
Yeah, you got it.
Yay! And I love it because you've written a little book basically on feeding, and you mentioned it before of how different dogs and cats are. And we were talking about fasting, which is something that dogs do, but cats don't do.
Mm-hmm.
So your experiences in cats. And I know one of the biggest lesson I learned when I started doing this podcast is that cats absolutely need a fresh or raw diet. Kibble is not only a death sentence, but a long disease sentence of just nonstop issues. So we don't want to fast your cat, but they definitely suffer from this also. And this is something that they'll do the same thing. They'll drink the bone broth.
Typically, yeah. I mean, sometimes we have to get a little creative with cats. That's part of why I love working with cats so much. Again, it's really hard to get bored when you're working with cats. They all need you to do something a little differently.
Yep.
So I've had a few where we've had to syringe it because for cats, the volume that we need to do this is pretty small. So, and it's obviously not an unpleasant flavored thing for them to drink.
I have also syringed dogs, older dogs. I've also syringed apple cider vinegar into them because sneaking it into their water or food, some of them smell it and they're like, nope, not touching it. So absolutely. I do want everyone to know that I might have a rescue and I have 9 dogs here. So I've got the dogs that will eat and drink anything that I hand to them. And then I have the others that are old that I might have to wait till they're asleep, or it takes 3 of us or whatever. But I don't want everyone to think that you put down a bowl of broth and the dog that needs it the most is probably going to be the dog that drinks it last.
Yeah, often.
I know cats, and I hear people say it all the time. Well, I can't get this in their mouth, or I can't, do it. Well, if they really need to, we got to figure it out. And,
exactly. Yep.
Whether you have to condition them to doing it, and, people think it won't get better, but it will. I have a 15-year-old Shih Tzu that I've got to get, 2 full droppers a day of our full spectrum in her. And in the beginning, she fought so hard, and now she takes it. And whether she's figured out it's the thing that makes me feel so good, or she just got used to it, I don't know. But yeah, I want people to understand that they may not drink it. So if you do suspect this, you may have to syringe it into their mouth. And the good thing is that it tastes good, so they're not going to be angry with you later or afterwards.
I mean, maybe on principle, these are cats, but it won't be like when you're trying to syringe a bitter medication in, or heaven forbid, cherry flavored antibiotics.
Exactly.
They really don't for that.
So what kind of successes have you seen with cats?
Oh gosh, using bone broth and switching diets in cats. I mean, even before I used much bone broth, just switching diets in cats makes such a huge difference. And using the bone broth makes it happen a lot faster. So what I found in dogs, because there's a lot of dampness involved here, and raw food tends to be very damp, is that sometimes we have to do cooked food with dogs for a little while. Right. With cats, even the ones that have terrible inflammatory bowel disease and just so much dampness that their bellies are filling with fluid, a lot of times if we put them on raw food and then add the bone broth, they'll get better within a course of a week sometimes, if we've managed to pick the right protein. And especially if prior to our diet change they were eating kibble, the starches in there are pro-inflammatory for cats, and then just the shape and the fact that it sits in the stomach for 8 or 10 hours. These carnivores, their stomachs are designed to hold food for maybe an hour before all that food is in the intestines. So when we feed them kibble and it sits there for 8 to 10 hours or longer, that in itself causes inflammation in the stomach, which then can trigger this whole cascade. So yeah, just switching the diet makes a massive difference for cats in so many different health problems, honestly.
Most of the health problems go away. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had cats with problems where I didn't think it was likely to change with the food. It was something else we were dealing with, but we also needed to change the food. We changed the food, and suddenly they were like they were, 2 years old again, and everything was great.
What is it like to have someone come in and learn that the kibble that they were feeding their cat is what's causing all of the problems? Because they I love it because they're like, it's the most expensive kibble out there.
I know, yeah.
Like,
I get that one a lot.
Yeah.
Also but she likes it so much. Well, I would like to eat potato chips every meal myself, but I'd be in really poor health if I did that.
Right. So what do you do and they see all of their pets' problems go away by switching the diet? They've been,
Well, yeah, once we can convince these people who, they really liked kibble because they thought they picked the best one, and maybe they did, but even the best kibble is not really great, and they thought their cat really liked it. Well, once we can get them switched and they see the incredible health benefits, which they do almost 100% of the time, a lot of times I will get these people who thought processed food was great and really were resistant to raw or fresh food, who become these raw food zealots, and now they're out there spreading the good news to everyone that you should really only feed your cats raw food.
it's so true because every time you hear the problems with cats, it's all related to their food.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the vaccinations and all the other stuff, like dogs, it's usually we are over vaccinating them, we're feeding the kibble, but cats, man, cats, I feel like diet is, the
Yeah.
biggest issue with them because they're so different from dogs. They don't have a natural thirst. They don't go seek out water. They only get their hydration when they're eating food. And I look at all these things of how people have the water fountains and all the things to encourage them to drink when that's not how they get their hydration. So what is,
Mm-hmm.
I guess food would be the most important thing for cats. Is that the same thing you would say for dogs?
Oh,
Diet?
yeah. I would say that for everyone. If you are eating a poor quality diet and then going to all of the best healthcare practitioners, getting all of the best herbs and body work and everything, you might be able to improve your health some, but your body only has what you've given it to work with. And if what you've given it for raw materials is poor quality food, then it's really never going to be able to create vibrant health out of that. So you really have to start from a good quality diet first, and then work on adding body work, herbs, energy healing, whatever else you're going to add, and then your body will be able to really do something with all of that.
I love it. Let food be thy medicine. And as you can see, my dogs
Mm-hmm.
agree with you. Where can they find more information? And are you available like consultation over the phone? Can someone who is listening get book a consultation with you online?
Yes, actually.
Good. And where
Right
can they
now,
find you?
my practice is so busy, I'm not taking more in-person clients, but I am still taking phone consults.
Great.
And you can find me at my website, which is healinghandspetvet.com. Or I'm also on Facebook, both the practice, myself personally, and then I've got a Facebook group as well called Lady of the Beasts. And Erika Halle is the person who runs that. So if that's the group you found, that's my group.
Cool. I
And
don't
you
think
can,
I'm on your group, so I'm going to join it.
yeah, I've actually recently shifted my group to be a little less about the medical questions and a little more about animal communication and shamanic work with animals. So that's super fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Ooh,
But I
neat.
still do have medical questions in that group from time to time. And of course, it's a place you can get in touch with me if you're looking for help with consultations and things like that.
Well, thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you today, and I really appreciate you giving our listeners and myself so much information that helps. One more way for us to help our pets live long and healthy and naturally. So I really appreciate it.
You're so, so welcome.
Thank you, and I hope to talk to you again. It was wonderful having you on.
I look forward to it.